A Marine with a Force Reconnaissance element racks the slide on a pistol whose core design dates to before the First World War. The Marine standing next to him, from a regular rifle company, is carrying a pistol designed decades after the Cold War ended. Both are technically still in the US military's inventory today. Only one of them has an official retirement date that never quite stuck. By any reasonable accounting, the M1911 should be a museum piece by now. The standard issue sidearm it lost its job to in 1985 has itself already been replaced, its own successor now spreading across the entire US military. The rifle company down the road is carrying a handgun built specifically to finally retire everything the M1911 represented. More ammunition, modern materials, a round standardized across NATO. Features built for an era of combat optics and accessory rails the original design never anticipated. And in a Marine Corps Special Operations armory not far away, armorers spent decades rebuilding and refielding M1911 pattern pistols long after that first retirement, through the entire service life of the pistol that replaced it, and into the fielding of the pistol that replaced that one too. That's not a story about the military being too sentimental to let go of an old design. Sentiment doesn't survive 4 decades of continuous investment. Hand-built rebuilds, a fresh commercial contract, specialist armorers keeping the platform serviceable, from an institution with every reason to just issue whatever the standard sidearm happened to be that year. Institutions don't usually keep spending money to preserve a feeling. They spend money to solve a problem. And the fact that the money kept flowing toward this particular 100-year-old solution, decade after decade, is the detail worth sitting with. It's a story about what happens when a design solves a specific problem so completely that every attempt to move past it ends up rediscovering exactly why it worked in the first place. The story most people know about the M1911 has a clean, satisfying shape. Adopted in 1911, carried through 2 world wars, Korea and Vietnam, and then formally replaced in 1985 when the US military adopted the Beretta M9 as its new standard issue sidearm. Higher magazine capacity, a round shared with NATO allies, modern manufacturing built around production methods the original 1911 design never had access to. On paper, that's exactly how military technology is supposed to work. A design that served admirably for most of a century, finally giving way to something built for a new era. Most people assume that's where the story ends. An old pistol lost a fair competition to a newer one, and that's the last anyone in uniform needed to think about it. That assumption treats pistol development like a straight line, each generation strictly better than the one before it, with nothing worth carrying backward once a replacement arrives. It's a reasonable thing to assume, and it's exactly how procurement briefings tend to present the decision at the time. It's also not how the M1911's actual service record played out, once you look past the official replacement date and into which units kept issuing which pistols for the following 4 decades. The Beretta M9 deserves an honest accounting, because it wasn't a bad decision made for bad reasons. It gave American forces a 15-round magazine against the M1911's 7, a round, 9mm NATO, that standardized ammunition logistics across an entire alliance, and a double-action trigger that let a soldier carry it with a round chambered and the hammer down, a real safety advantage for troops who weren't dedicated pistol specialists. Those weren't marginal improvements. For the overwhelming majority of service members who might need a sidearm only in the rarest emergency, more rounds, safer carry, and shared ammunition with every NATO ally in the fight were exactly the right priorities. And the M9 delivered on all 3 without asking anyone to compromise much of anything they actually needed day to day. Alongside the M9, the military also fielded the Sig Sauer M11, a more compact companion pistol issued to specific units and criminal investigative personnel who needed something smaller to conceal or carry comfortably for long stretches without the bulk of a full-size service pistol. It wasn't the M1911's successor. It served next to the M9, filling a gap the standard pistol alone couldn't cover for everyone who needed a sidearm. It's its own small chapter in the same broader story, a specialized answer built alongside the standard one, for users whose needs the standard pistol didn't quite meet. Decades later, the Sig Sauer modular handgun system, fielded as the full-size M17 and, for the Marine Corps specifically, the compact M18, solved a different set of problems the M9 had accumulated over 30 years of service. A modular design let the same pistol be reconfigured across different grip sizes for different hands, addressing a fit problem that had dogged the M9 for smaller-framed shooters for years. Improved manufacturing tolerances, a lighter overall package, and features built around modern optics and accessories brought the standard sidearm fully into a generation of equipment the M9 had never been designed to integrate with. Once again, for the broad population of troops who carry a pistol as a backup weapon rather than a primary tool, that was a defensible, well-earned upgrade. And by most measures, a better pistol than the one it replaced. None of that is in dispute. What's harder to explain, if pistol development really were a straight line of improvement, is why elite units kept declining to get fully on that line, even as a newer pistol arrived carrying more measurable advantages than its predecessor ever offered. The units that continued relying on M1911 pattern pistols long after 1985 weren't doing so out of unfamiliarity with what had replaced it. Force Reconnaissance Marines and other specialized users had every opportunity to carry the standard issue sidearm of the moment, and for the most part, everyone else around them did exactly that. What kept a specific, narrower slice of operators coming back to the M1911 pattern was a set of qualities that mattered disproportionately to the specific job those units actually did. Qualities that a spec sheet built for general infantry issue was never going to weigh the same way a Force Recon armorer would. The 45 ACP round the M1911 was built around has carried a battlefield reputation for stopping power that traces back more than a century. Marines in the reconnaissance community widely believed in that reputation and prioritized it when they pushed for a .45 caliber platform of their own. Whether the round's real-world edge over modern 9mm loads was as decisive as its reputation suggested is a genuinely debated question among firearms experts. But the belief itself clearly shaped the platform's continued use. For units whose mission profile revolves around close-quarters engagements, where a single, decisive hit matters more than a large magazine's worth of follow-up shots, that reputation carried real institutional weight, passed from one generation of operators to the next, as much through shared conviction as through any measurable ballistic data. The single-action trigger the M1911 design is built around offers a level of precision and consistency that's difficult to match with a double-action or striker-fired system, particularly for shooters who train enough to exploit that difference fully. For a general-issue sidearm carried by someone who might fire it a handful of times a year, that difference barely registers, and it's not worth designing an entire service pistol around. For an operator who puts thousands of rounds through a pistol during a single pre-deployment workup, it's the difference between a tool that disappears into muscle memory and one that doesn't. Between a trigger pull that's identical every single time and one that shifts character depending on whether the hammer's already back. Frame durability mattered too, but the real story is more interesting than simple toughness. The officer in charge of the Marine Corps' precision weapons shop said plainly that the M1911A1 was the only frame that could stand up to Force Reconnaissance's training pace. Units that could put thousands of rounds through a pistol in the weeks before a single deployment, some individual frames eventually absorbing several 100,000 rounds over their service lives. But that durability came with a cost the general issue pistol never had to pay. Those rebuilt frames needed a specialist armorer's inspection and overhaul roughly every 10,000 rounds, hand-fitted by the same small shop at Quantico that built them in the first place. Nothing about it was low maintenance. The people who depended on it simply judged it worth maintaining that closely, a trade-off that, decades later, would push the Marine Corps toward an entirely different way of keeping the same platform going. This doesn't make the M1911 pattern a better general-purpose sidearm than what replaced it, and it was never trying to be. It was solving a narrower problem for a smaller population of demanding users. And it kept solving that problem long after the broader military had moved on to something better suited to everyone else. What's striking isn't that any one operator preferred it. It's that the preference kept reasserting itself across units and across decades. surviving a fully fielded replacement generation and outlasting years of the next one, without any single institutional memo forcing that outcome. No one ordered anyone to keep trusting the M1911 pattern. Enough operators simply kept arriving at that conclusion on their own, one demanding training cycle and one deployment at a time, that the institution kept funding hardware to support it. Here's the detail that turns this from an interesting footnote into something more substantial. Just as the Beretta M9 was settling in as America's new standard-issue sidearm in the mid-1980s, Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance elements were already working on their own answer. Advocated by Colonel Robert Young and built by Marine armorers at the Precision Weapons Section in Quantico starting in 1986, the resulting handgun became known as the MUSOC pistol, a designation that stood for Marine Expeditionary Unit Special Operations Capable. This was neither a leftover stock of old service pistols pulled out of storage, nor a pistol manufactured from scratch. Armorers hand-selected existing government-issue M1911 A1 frames, stripped them down to essentially bare metal, and rebuilt them with aftermarket match-grade barrels, triggers, sights, and safeties from a short list of specialist commercial suppliers. Painstaking work closer to building a custom firearm around a trusted foundation than either warehousing an old design or manufacturing something entirely new. The timing alone tells the story better than any spec sheet could. Right around the same year one board of officers signed off on the M9 as the future of American service pistols, a small shop of Marine gunsmiths was already rebuilding an alternative to hand their own operators instead. That commitment didn't fade as the years passed and the M9 settled in as the default sidearm everywhere else. The MUSOC pistol program kept evolving through the 1990s and into the 2000s, eventually giving way to updated close-quarter battle variants as operational demands increased and the supply of usable government-issue frames grew harder to source. By 2012, the Marine Corps had contracted an entirely new, commercially manufactured M1911 pattern pistol, the M45A1, built to modern manufacturing standards with an accessory rail, upgraded night sights, an ambidextrous safety, and a desert tan finish designed for the field rather than the parade ground. The switch to a factory-built pistol wasn't only about chasing new features. The hand-fitted MUSOC system had become a serious sustainment problem, dependent on a small specialist shop and an aging pool of donor frames, with individual pistols needing to be shipped back to Quantico for overhaul every 10,000 rounds. The M45A1 used standardized, replaceable parts that ordinary unit armorers could service in the field, preserving the platform the operators wanted in a form the supply chain could actually keep running. It was, in other words, a fresh contract built specifically to keep more of essentially the same gun in Marine hands, just in a form that could survive the logistics of another few decades. The lineage outlived the M9 completely, and kept going into the pistol that replaced it too. Marine Corps Forces Special Operations Command authorized its operators to carry the Glock 19 as an alternative starting in February 2015, and by September 2016 had shifted its special operations units to the Glock 19 as their standard sidearm. The first real crack in the M1911 pattern lineage's decades-long run, driven largely by ammunition and maintenance logistics rather than any verdict on the pistol's performance. But MARSOC was only one part of the Marine Corps' broader special operations and reconnaissance community, and the M45A1 kept serving in Force Reconnaissance and other units well after that. The Marine Corps began fielding the M18, its chosen variant of the same modular handgun system that had already replaced the Army's M9, starting in 2020, with reconnaissance units among the first scheduled to receive it. And the M45A1 remained an authorized Marine Corps sidearm alongside the new pistol into 2021. That's a documented run from 1986 to the early 2020s. An M1911 pattern pistol, continuously rebuilt, recontracted, and refielded, that outlasted the entire service life of the pistol that had officially replaced it, and remained in specialized use years into the fielding of the pistol that replaced that one. It's worth being precise about what that pattern does and doesn't prove. It doesn't mean the M1911 quietly remained the real standard sidearm the whole time, hiding in plain sight while the M9 and M18 got the credit. Nearly everyone in uniform carried exactly what they were issued, generation after generation. And for the vast majority of those service members, the newer pistols were simply better tools for the job they needed done. What the Musoc and M45 lineage proves is narrower and in some ways more remarkable. That across nearly 4 decades and 2 entirely separate standard-issue pistols, a small population of the most experienced operators in the American military kept arriving at the same conclusion, on their own, about the same 19th century design. That's not institutional inertia. Inertia doesn't survive a fresh commercial contract built specifically to keep the platform sustainable for another generation of use. Inertia would have let the original stock of M1911A1s simply age out of service somewhere around the 1990s and never looked back. What actually happened was closer to a standing habit of reinvestment, renewed by people with every professional incentive to choose whatever worked best and no institutional pressure telling them which answer to reach. The M1911 didn't outlast the pistols that replaced it because the military secretly preferred an old design over new ones. Every pistol that officially took over its role solved real problems for the vast majority of the people who carried a sidearm, and those improvements were genuine, not cosmetic. The Beretta M9 was a better general-issue pistol than the M1911A1 it replaced. The M17 and M18 are, by most honest measures, better general-issue pistols than the M9. None of that is in question, and none of it is what this story is actually about. What the M1911 proved instead was something narrower and harder to plan around from a procurement office. That a design built to solve one very specific problem, putting a single, decisive round on target in the hands of an operator who trained enough to exploit everything that design offered, doesn't become irrelevant just because a more broadly capable pistol replaces it everywhere else. It just goes looking for the users who still need exactly that problem solved. And it keeps finding them, decade after decade, whether procurement planners built that possibility into the spec sheet or not. Nobody sitting on the board that selected the Beretta M9 in the mid-1980s was planning for Marine gunsmiths to still be rebuilding M1911 pattern pistols by hand 3 decades later. The design found its own way back into relevance anyway, because the specific problem it solved never stopped needing solving for the specific people who kept encountering it. That's the real story behind the ancient American M1911. It was never trying to out-argue the M9 or the M18 on paper, and by most reasonable measures for a general-issue sidearm, it wouldn't have won that argument. It survived in the hands of the operators who mattered most to its reputation because generation after generation of them arrived at the same conclusion on their own, without needing the last generation's endorsement to trust their own experience. Some tools earn a level of confidence that newer features on a spec sheet don't automatically inherit, no matter how many boxes those features check. Sometimes the most advanced pistol in the world still isn't the one a veteran operator reaches for when the job in front of him is exactly the job the old design was built to solve 100 years earlier. If you want more stories about American weapons that earned a trust modern engineering never fully replaced, subscribe to Warfare Unclassified. And let us know in the comments which legendary weapon you want us to make the case for next.